So if I have audio, do I need to come up mute?
That's a good question. I don't know. Would you be able to move your computer over here?
Yeah, does it have a power?
Yeah. Well, so let's see this. All right, for those online, just be patient. We're sorting out IT issues. Let's see. All right. Will I go into this one? Yeah.
Oh, is that your power cord? Yeah.
Okay, now let's see if it'll just go. Will that beam up to there now?
Oh yeah.
There we go. You should be recording. Yeah, so then go ahead and unmute.
Okay, well, minus that, yeah. Okay.
How about now?
I'll read it.
All right, yeah, if I unmute. Okay.
For yours.
If you don't mind, I might just oh, maybe I need to turn my. Just gonna see if we can get to the volume. Is there audio? See, this is your output is this is your computer, the real tech. Oh, I see. Which should be fine. Yeah. I don't know. Do we want to see if there's an echo? It seems like it should be fine right now. You're not muted, and I'm not hearing any feedback. Okay. How many folks are online? Can we check and see if there's an echo? Hey, I hear you.
For the folks online, are you able to hear us okay?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I guess it's just one person. Elizabeth Daly, are you able to hear us okay?
Yeah.
Maybe she can.
Maybe she can't.
I'll put in the chat. Oh, yep. Oh, great. Oh, Justin can hear us. Oh, okay, cool. So is there audio or no audio? Like if I
Like
have
you
a
play
video?
something?
Yeah.
It should work.
If
Yeah.
it doesn't, it's not really the
It might come out of your computer.
That's no.
Should come out of the speaker.
Okay.
I think we should do it.
Hopefully it's not too loud.
Hmm.
Heck is exciting.
I can hear you fine.
Okay, it's fine. You know what? I can now.
Just want to use this though.
While we sort this out, welcome all to our fourth lecture at Stone Lab. I want to say thank you for the 4 weekers who have been here. Are any of you staying next week? Besides, are you? Okay, so quite a few of you. So there's several in the ecology class, right? If you're not in the ecology class and you're staying, put your hands up. 1, 2, 3. 3 of you are carrying over. Okay, great. There will be 2 more classes checking in next week. You might get some new roommates, so be aware of that. And then for tomorrow, minors still have to check in, right? Do your students check in? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, so don't forget to check in for the holiday. And then hope you all have good final exams coming up. Okay, so with that, I'll let Harrison introduce our speaker.
Hi, everybody. So today, over the past couple of months, I've been talking with Danny Neelon, who works for the Northeast Ohio Regional Sewer District. And when I first met Danny at the Freshwater Institute meeting, which is a consortium of people who do really cool water-related projects in a variety of sectors in Northeast Ohio. I was immediately impressed by your background with NERSC, but also as a researcher in another life at the University of Wisconsin. We'll hear about that in a moment. But what I'm really happy is that Danny's been able to join us here tonight to be able to talk to you about different pathways from science to be able to contribute to practice in very meaningful ways. So I don't want to steal too much of his thunder because he has a little bit of background he'll provide. But let's welcome Danny.
Thank you, Harrison, for that wonderful introduction. I appreciate that. Thank you guys all for being here. I know we're on the eve of a holiday weekend, so your brains might be elsewhere. So I appreciate you guys sticking out with me. And I've never been up to the Stone Lab before, so it's been cool, and everyone's been super welcoming. It was great to hear from you all. Hopefully, we can talk a little bit more at the end if you have any questions about the work that I did. When I was talking to Harrison about can you hear me okay or no?
Yeah, you're fine. Just keep talking.
I was talking to Harrison about what people come to talk to you all about. Said it was very science heavy, and a lot of people do their dissertation research, which I will do a little bit of today and share that with you so that you, if you're interested, I know some people wanted to hear about the frogs, and so I'm happy to tell you all about that. But while we do that, let me see if I can minimize that. Good enough, right? While we do that, I want to also talk about some of the other things that go along with getting your career. And hopefully we can spend a little bit of time talking about the things that you might be interested in and some of the soft skills that you're going to need if you want to transition from a science career into an academic career or into an industry career, into an agency career, and how you can translate some of those skills. And so these are my lessons from frogs, and I have about 5 of them, but hopefully we can get to them all today. So a little bit about me, like Harrison said, I really wanted, I started my career on the academic side. I really wanted to be a college professor. That was like my dream job. I wanted to study biology, and then I wanted to help explain it to people, get people interested in biology. I thought it was really important. So I followed like that normal pathway to start. I had a great mentor in undergrad who encouraged me to say, go to grad school and do a lot of teaching and get your teaching practice done. And so that's what I did. So I started as a lab instructor. I did some extra biology tutoring. And then as soon as I passed my exams, I went in your ABD, so you haven't written your dissertation yet, but you're in the process. I started adjunct lecturing outside of the college. So I was really kind of pigeonholed as a lab instructor. I wanted to do some classroom teaching. So that's what I did. And I was explaining earlier to Zach that I was set up after I graduated. My dissertation's done. I'm really excited. I'm graduated. And I was set up to go teach at a nearby college, small college. I was helping out at their field station this summer. We were getting ready for the ecology class. I had a full roster for my animal communication class. Everything was going to be great. And they called me like at the top of August and they say, hey, enrollment's down. We didn't have as many freshmen matriculate. So we actually have to give your class to a senior faculty because they have a teaching obligation as part of their tenure, but we'll give you a lab and we'll pay you $1,000. That's for a semester of teaching once a week. I was like, yeah, no, I'm not going to do that. That was my pivot indicator. And we're going to talk about pivot indicators in a little bit, but that was my pivot indicator. I moved back to Ohio and a friend of mine reached out and said, hey, I have a great opportunity for you. It's at the Northeast Ohio Regional Sewer District. And I was like, I'm an animal communication scientist. I study animal behavior. I'm not going in sewers. I don't want to do that. I'm not that desperate. I'm desperate for a job, but I'm not that desperate, right? She said, no, it's a field position. You're going to do field work. You're going to do water quality sampling. You're going to do electrofishing. You're going to do macroinvertebrate sampling. And you're going to do all this as indicators of our water quality in the Cuyahoga River and the direct tribs in the central basin of Lake Erie. Like, okay, I can do that. I can go back to field research. If I can't teach, I can at least be a field researcher. I was doing that during my dissertation. So I can do that. Best decision I ever made. I put down my walls. I dove in there. I learned as much as I could. I had a doctorate, right? So you think, oh, I've learned everything I need to learn. Absolutely not. I didn't know the first thing about water quality. Never heard of microcystin. Couldn't identify an algal bloom from the bottom of my shoe. So I had a lot to learn. So I dove in. I learned as much as I could in those 2 years. And then I was in the field one day. We were tracking an illicit discharge, and my phone goes off. I'm checking my email, and there's a job posting for a community relations specialist at the sewer district. Go out in the community. We need you to educate. We need you to talk to people, organizations, students about the work we do and why it is so important to the health of Lake Erie. And I was like, bet, I can do that. I had the background. I had the teaching experience. I have the credentials. This is what I want to do. Now I'm back into teaching. So I wanted to be a teacher, and I started that route, right? And now I get to jump, pivot, take a less desirable option, and now I'm teaching again, right? So I'm doing lectures, I'm giving tours, I'm talking to student groups, I'm mentoring. I do a ton of intern mentoring, I do a ton of interview prep. I'm helping the next generation of scientists become scientists or regulatory biologists or legal analysts. So I get to do all that work. And so I'm right where I wanted to be, right? Just not at a university. Okay. So that allows me to climb up the ladder and become a strategic partnership lead. Now, full disclosure that while I'm doing all this in the science world, I'm also doing all this in my other life. Okay. I'm a lifeguard, I'm a swim instructor, I've been a bartender, front desk clerk at a dance studio, a tap dance instructor, a barista, tons of experience in the service industry. So just like a frog hops from place to place to place, myself and maybe some of you in your career are going to hop around a little bit. That's okay. It's not supposed to be a straight line, because if it's a straight line, you're not learning anything. You're not facing adversity. You're not gaining accessory skills. When you spend your whole life growing up in an academic setting, you're not really living in the real world. And in a time in which in the real world, science is severely under attack, when you're surrounded by people who are like, oh yeah, that's good research. I believe you. You have a PhD. Sounds good. I go out to communities and they're like, BS, you guys are doing this, you're doing that. This is your fault. You're dumping this in the lake. They don't believe you. The letters after your name don't matter to them, right? And so spending this time in the back and forth has really helped me grow. So if you fall asleep in a little bit, I wanted to hit you with the lessons right away. I've got 5 lessons. So if you tune out, you can take these with you. And I'm not bearing the lead, okay? Don't make assumptions, be choosy, know your transferable skills, practice selective attention, and then take the lead. Okay, those are my lessons. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to run through a little bit of my the concepts we studied in grad school, the things we learned about these frogs, the things that they can teach us about getting our careers and the way that we can move through this industry. So first, don't make assumptions. So let's start with the green tree frog, Hylas cinereum. Sorry, it's a little cut off there on the top. But what drew us to the green tree frog in my lab and our sister lab and our grand lab, my advisor's advisor, was that the male tree frog makes a very loud, conspicuous, energy-intensive call. Okay, they're very, very tiny, and you can hear them from about a mile away as you're approaching a frog course, right? And he's doing all this at the risk of predation. He's got to climb out in the open. He's burning up all his energy. Has anybody stayed up all night crying? You can raise your hand. If you were in grad school, raise your hand right now if you have a degree. That's right. So when you're exhausted, right? So he's doing that all night, and then he does it again and again and again all summer. So why would he do that? What would drive the evolution of such an extreme, extravagant, conspicuous trait in the face of all of these pieces of natural selection? And that is the force of sexual selection. Anybody familiar with this concept? Some people, if you've taken evolution in ecology, you've dabbled a little bit, right? Darwin knew about this in the 1800s, started getting a little bit more attention in the mechanisms throughout the 80s. But the idea is that there's a social competition going on, right? And the social competition is the competition for mating opportunities, okay? And you might think about this in 2 ways. Male-male competition, which results in the evolution of these extravagant weapons, and the goal is to exclude other males from the breeding area, right? So now it's just me here because I've stabbed this other guy, he's going away. I got him with my horns. The alternative is mate choice. So I'm not in direct physical competition with anybody. I'm trying to draw everybody to me and be the most attractive one in the room. Make sense? And so we were looking at mate choice and sexual selection via mate choice as something that was really important because it drives the evolution of these extravagant traits. And there can be divergence in these traits between populations, and that can lead to speciation, right? So sexual selection via mate choice can be an evolutionary driver and account for some of the diversity we're seeing in the environment, right? Is everybody with me so far? Okay, so that's what we wanted to know. We're trying to dig into that. So that says mate choice up there. So when we're talking about mate choice, we study this at the population level. So yes, we do want to know what an individual does, but we want to aggregate that data so we can see what the population is doing as a whole. Do they like the green or do they like the blue, for example? So when you test each of these females for their preference, you can build what's called a preference function. So you have variety in the male trait along one axis and female preference for that trait at the top. And for a long time, the assumption was that these preferences were species specific. That's how you get this bird from that bird and the red bird and the blue bird and the green bird, and that they were stereotypic. So within your species, all the females in the bluebird species like the bluest bird there can be, and all the red birds like the reddest bird, right? And that was the assumption. So if that's the assumption here, right, this is my most favored, and these guys are not favored at all. Look at no females have a preference for the blue or the dark black. Why is there still light blue males and dark black males in the population? If they're not getting any mating opportunities, how are they making it generation after generation? Why is there variation in the male trait? So we've known about this since the 1800s, and people started looking almost exclusively at the males. Okay, it's condition dependent. This male's not healthy. So even though he has good genes, he can make feathers if he's really healthy. He's got an immune system problem. He doesn't have the right immune genes. And that's what one of the bird people on the upper floor was studying when I was in grad school. Another looked at resource acquisition. If from year to year, there's more red berries this year, I get a lot of carotenoids, I get a lot of red berries. Now my feathers are really pretty this year, but next year they're not going to be because there was a drought, right? Maybe it's too hot right now to make pretty feathers. And that would fall under natural selection and environmental stochasticity as well. Maybe just from year to year, conditions aren't right. I've got the genes, right? I've got that traits were passed on, but I can't produce them. And that's why there's variation in the male trait. And that goes under like phenotypic plasticity as well. But no one had looked at the females for almost 100 years. Okay. And that quote is cut off there. But these two scientists, Jayens and Petrie, were the first ones to really come up with this concept. Can I move this to the bottom maybe? Will it slide down? There we go. Oh, look at that technology. Amazing.
Not going any further.
It will not go any further. That's okay.
On my screen,
That one will
go
go down.
sharing. It's fun.
Oh, good. Okay. Like a hide. Amazing. Thank you. See, you see, I'm not in the classroom that much, right? Okay. So these two scientists, Jayens and Petrie, in 1997. Is anybody born after that in this room? It's okay. Yeah. So it seems like ages ago, but think about this. We've known about this for 150 years, and only in 1997 said, hey, maybe the girls have a say in all of this, right? Like, does that ring any? Okay. Never mind. We don't have to do that. Okay. I lost my, uh-oh. Did I do something new?
Oh. Click. Now try.
Amazing.
Yeah.
That's what we found. So in our lab group, we started looking at these preference functions across populations, and you can see they have some different characteristics. They have different shapes, right? There's a lot of variation in the females. Also notice that there is not close alignment with the male traits. So those blue bars are where the males fall in the population. We're looking at the dominant frequency of that call and the female's preference for that. And look at how mismatched that is with the majority of males in the population are actually not calling at the female's peak preference. Very interesting, right? So we were going to learn, we knew that there was stuff to learn here. So what did we need to do here? What did these scientists miss out after 150 years by assuming that females had no say in this? They liked what they liked because they're genetically programmed to just mate with men, and it's up to the men to have the variety and the variation, right? Well, they made a lot of assumptions. And so for me, talking to you guys today about careers in biology, about your future, about next year, about next month, do not make assumptions. Don't make assumptions about yourself and what you like to do. That's why I kind of asked the four of you, what was your favorite part about, or what did you really like to do? I have a student that came to me and he was in the lab and he said, I really hated organic chemistry. I hated it. So what did you hate about it? So my lab partner never did their part. I was always writing my report without his data 2 minutes before it was due. My advisor was no help. The teacher was no help. My TA was no help. Okay, it doesn't sound like you hated organic chemistry. You hated your lab partner and you hated your learning environment. Maybe you really do like chemistry and you need to switch up where you're doing chemistry or how you're doing chemistry. And so I thought, well, I haven't given another try because I didn't want to take that lab analyst job. I didn't want to take that chemist position because I just hated chemistry. And I was like, let's rethink that. Really dive into what it is that you like and you don't like about science, about being here this summer. Do you like just being on boats or being near the water? Maybe that's just your favorite part of it. That's okay. Don't make assumptions about your current role or project. How long is this project going to be funded for? Is this a role that I'm going to have this year, next year? Could it get cut off? Or do I pass this along to somebody? Do I have to hold on to this forever? Another thing you want to think about, especially for those of you that are doing projects now and aspiring or graduating soon and going to be applying somewhere, is make sure that when you're describing the work that you're doing, you're encompassing everything. I could tell somebody that I'm a behavioral ecologist. They might not really understand what that means. I could say I'm a herpetologist because I work with frogs. I could say just a general biologist, an ecologist, an ethologist, which is someone who studies behavior, right? There's many different ways to describe the job that I was doing, right, when I was doing research. So think about your current role. What it is that you bring to the table, what you're doing in that role, and how would you describe your interests, your passion to someone else? You are not your job title, okay? Think about that. Don't make assumptions about what schools, what companies, what agencies, and what industries are looking for your skills. If there's something you want to do and someone says, oh, the only way to do that is go to grad school, be an academic, and be in a research lab and fight for grants and deal with school administration and do all that, I'm here to tell you that is not the truth, okay? You can get a very rewarding scientific career outside of academia, within industry, within agency, okay? Lots of people are looking for people who think like scientists and who are willing to spend 4 weeks of their summer on an island doing research or learning or taking a summer class. I mean, now I know you are all hard workers because you're not at home, on TikTok or doing whatever, because you're here, you're learning on your summer break. So I know everybody in this room has some skills that I would be looking for. And then, like I said, the stability of the field, where you're going to be next year, the year after, that have that rug pull on that job, funding cuts. We had a great
talking about tree frogs all night long. You hear from a mile away.
Ring any bells? So the Now Corps was this great program where the federal government gave nonprofits
maybe it's a girl
to hire on recent college grads, recent high school grads
to transition
them into careers. And there was a cohort of 25 environmental science students, recent grads in this transitional. You rotate through different agencies and government rug pull. 25 kids now unemployed, no job prospects, all competing for the same 2 open positions in the field. Okay, moving along. Be choosy. So let's see if this works.
It's a baby frog that wants to peek inside.
This is our female. You can kind of see her there. She jumps to the male.
Probably a female one.
And this is all happening in the dark. So we have the light on here, but she was able to spot him with her ears. Okay. Then they pair up.
Ooh.
And then they sit
a couple of them pairing up.
In plexus until the sun starts to rise. She lays her eggs. And then they don't do parental care here. So we have the light on them so you can see this is happening in the pitch dark. So she's on one little thin reed, he's on the other. And just with her ears, she was able to pinpoint him exactly where he was and grab onto him and say, I'm over here, sweetie, I'm ready. And that's what she does. Okay. But more often than not, I guess not more often than not, or they would all be gone, but quite frequently I would see this. And so this is a female who was trying to find her way to a male and was not so successful. So there's a lot of risk, and especially at a pond where the guy's saying, hey, buffet's open, and he's shouting, and all these females are trying to get to him. There were snakes everywhere. There were alligators everywhere.
There's a 3-part TBS on something called the Kimberley, which is an area of Australia.
And this is where choosiness comes.
And it's like
choosiness was
really
identified as
very wild.
Different from their preference.
Too many people probably
if you have
live
a preference, I like pizza or hot dogs.
They had
and
this
10 out of 10 times when pizza is in front of me and a hot dog's in front of me, I'm eating the pizza.
Sort of walk in shallow water.
But the pizza costs $100.
Big buggy eyes.
Do you pay the $100?
2 males fighting over female. And she's sitting there watching them.
There you go. So you would say if it was a cheese pizza versus a hot dog.
And then it goes birds.
Hey, right? Because you're not depending on what's
the one male bird is building
what are you willing
a bower to try to attract a female bird.
What are you willing to invest? How many resources?
His favorite stone in the bower.
Or you're willing to travel to get your
a whole bunch of stones when he picks one up, puts it in there, and then
different animal systems, they quantify this in different ways. It could be the number of males you're willing to sample to see if any of them match your preference. It could be your latency to breeding. So I'm going to sit here and hold my eggs until the right male comes along, but I'm only going to do it for like an hour. And then I'm just going to take the best of that pool, right?
And
in choosing this in green tree frogs is accomplished through this phenomena, because remember, it's pitch black. They cannot see males. They don't know how far away they are visually. but they can tell how far away they
Yeah,
are
you haven't seen that?
with their
Okay.
ears, okay, acoustically. So if a male is 1 meter from a female,
What?
and you want to move him away from her by 2 meters, he becomes 6 decibels quieter, right? Inverse square law of sound attenuation. And so for every decrease in sound by 6 decibels, which is just a measure of volume, right? Every decrease in 6 decibels doubles the distance. And so if he sounds much quieter, he's much farther away. And females have very acute hearing. They can judge distances very, very well just by the sound. And so the farther away a male is, the greater risk she's going to be at predation, right? Like we said, and the farther she has to travel. Frogs are tiny, right? This is over 300 body lengths. So she's got to really make her way over there, right? So we can measure how far females are willing to go, and that's their choosiness, for their preferred mate. And that actually is what influences mate choice decisions and how genes are passed on from generation to generation to generation, right? So these mate choice decisions can impact that, and it's made up of these 2 components. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay. So you have your preferences, but you understand that choosiness is a little bit different, what you're willing to pay to get to where you want to go. Okay, so that matters. All right. So we know that there's variation in mate choice decisions. They've been able to show that crickets vary in size. They also vary in their preferences. And in the social environment, when there's a variety of different males around you, maybe some are your preferred male, some are unpreferred, that can impact the way that you make your mate choice decisions too. In these little tree hoppers that were studied in our sister lab, they discovered that if you have a lot of unattractive males around you, the females will actually lower their preferences. They kind of lower their standards. So if this was a talk about lessons from tree hoppers, I'd be telling you to lower your standards, but it's not. It's about tree frogs, which are all about choosiness, which again is different, okay? So we have this hypothesis that we could have socially induced, which means impacted by your environment, and experience mediated. So what happens today versus what happens tomorrow versus what happens over here. Plasticity, so changes in choosiness. I could make a female more choosy or less choosy, willing to travel further or willing to stay a little bit closer. I could alter her perception of risk essentially by giving her some environmental variation, okay? And that's basically what we did. And I'm happy to dive into methodology and things a little bit more, but for the sake of time, we had 4 treatments. We captured gravid females. We played them just a chorus of attractive males. Some we played unattractive males, so there's not very many preferred mates. A mixed chorus of attractive and unattractive males, and then some silence. And then we test from 3 a.m. to 7 a.m., so it's a long haul. The testing is super annoying. It sounds like this. Does that sound like a frog to you? No, it does not. But to them, it does. It doesn't matter. They hear that, they hear their peak frequency, they go to it. I'm talking 5 to 10 second latency to make a choice. They're very fast, they're out in the open, they do not want to be eaten, okay? So that lower sound was this male over here. The high-pitched irritating sound was that male over there. I would run like 40 females a night across 10 trials, do the math. So I have to listen to that over and over and over again, right? So when you wonder about how I feel about field work, there you go. So to test their choosiness then, we would first play, we want to set the standard. We give them equal choice. They almost always go to the attractive male. Females that didn't, we weren't sure were aligned in their preferences, so we would do a preference check on them just to make sure that this male call was within their preferences. Okay, so that's how we controlled for variation in preferences, which we also tested. Then we would put her back in the center after she made her choice, and we would turn him down. Okay, now that he's a little bit quieter, are you still going to pick him out? Remember, it's pitch black. We can barely see. So they can't see anything. They don't know they're in an arena. They just hear the sounds on either side, and they choose. And they want to mate because remember, the clock is ticking. Those eggs are ready. They will be laid at 7 a.m., whether she's got a male or not. So we plot this on a graph then as a relative percentage of the number of females who are still willing to go the distance as the males get quieter and quieter and quieter, okay? So at that initial decrease in volume, all the females say, nope, that's still my guy. I'm still gonna go the distance. But right around -9, so really not that much quieter, some of them start turning back. You know what? That's too far. There could be gators. I'm not interested. And that goes all the way till about -24, where it's almost just below our hearing threshold. We can still hear it, but I could really tell that it was going because the computer was running. And that's how we can kind of plot a very similar graph like the ones I showed you about choosiness, okay? So these are our results here. After we tested all these females, like I said, we aggregated them by treatment. And what we discovered is that females that had a mixed treatment or an attractive treatment, so they knew an attractive male was out there somewhere, were up to like 30 to 40% choosier than females who heard nothing, silence, or that were surrounded by unattractive males, okay? So these females in the top two groups knew there's somebody out there. I've heard this attractive guy. He's somewhere in my vicinity. I just heard him for the last 3 hours. I'm going to see if I can find him. I know he's out there somewhere. So they're willing to go the distance. The females in the other two trials, though, that heard silence or just a chorus of unattractive males, very non-preferred males, are like, it's a dud tonight, ladies. I'm not interested. We're going to find the first guy we can go, and we're going to get out. I'm not going the distance. Okay? Does that make sense to everybody? So why would they do this? Well, we have this trade-off between mate quality and mating assurance. And a lot of people have studied this, and this is kind of at the core of where we took this work, is how do we balance that trade-off? Because if I don't mate at all, super bad. My genes aren't going to the next generation. But if I mate with a less preferred male, is that better than no mating at all? You have to kind of weigh your options here. And so that comes to my second lesson about careers is be choosy. First, learn from your experiences. The frogs learn from their experiences. They weighed their options. They modified their behavior. You should be doing the same. If you hated it up here all summer, would you come back here the next summer just because your parents were like, yeah, that's you need to do this because it's for your career, right? You had a miserable time. Learn from your experiences. Most importantly, though, your next choice or your second to next choice does not equal your preference, okay? I wanted to be a teacher. I took a diversion. I did 2 years back in the field because I knew that it was an opportunity for growth for me, for stability, because it was a good choice for me at that time. And it was a trade-off, just like they did mate quality versus mate assurance, between career quality and career assurance, right? You will make some hard choices. You might pass up on a dream job because it doesn't come at the right time, because it might be in the wrong location. Maybe it's not quite the right topic, but it's at your dream university, but you're not really fond of that professor, right? Think very carefully about your choices and whether or not that little deviation, that side path, could actually lead you to something greater, right? It doesn't have to be, oh, well, you gave up on your dreams. No, I'm just taking a little detour for a second and then I will go. And you have to think outside the box in the way that different jobs, organizations, research opportunities could lead you to different paths. You do not have to risk it all, okay? You can make a safe choice when it makes sense. Now, be strategic. Know when no choice is better than the wrong choice. So what I haven't shared with you is that we did lots of different experience treatments. And in one experience treatment, we were actually able to reduce choosiness so much that we made those females pair with a heterospecific male. So not of their same species, which would have resulted in a hybridization. And those hybrids are far less fit. Okay, and they don't survive to adulthood. So that would have been a bad choice for her. She could have held off a little bit. And even if she had wasted those eggs, because now you have these unfit males in the next population, there's a little bit of interbreeding that goes on and some hybrid depression, which would have been bad for the population overall, right? We know that now. So there are options for you sometimes when you're like, you know what? I'm going to take a step back. I'm going to reevaluate. I'm going to say no to that job, even though I got the offer, because it just doesn't feel like a good fit. That's okay. All right. And then, like you said, know when to pivot. So these females took the opportunity when they said, he's really far away. That's going to be a lot of risk. And this guy over here, he's not so bad. Let me pivot. Okay. It's not settling. It's knowing when this trajectory is no longer serving me. And I need to pivot and know now what that indicator is going to be for you. Is it going to be money? That's okay. Is it going to be promotions? You get into a job, you realize there's no upward mobility. Maybe that's your pivot indicator. Have a conversation with your boss, your advisor, who says, you know what? I don't think this is going to work out for you. I don't think the study system or this research project is really what we want to be doing. Okay. Or you have a really bad test and you have a class and you're like, you know what? Do I really want to study biology? Maybe I want to do chemistry instead. figure out what your pivot indicator is going to be, and then pay attention to that. Try not to miss it. Okay. All right. Know your transferable skills. This is the big one.
We're done.
Okay. We did another study when I first started out of the field. See, we had some extra projects. What can we do here? What can we study? So we knew they had acute hearing, and we thought maybe they use this acute hearing to hunt prey. They listen to crickets. Crickets make a lot of noise. That's what we've been feeding them.
That's sad.
They're specialized hearing because they're not mating right now, so they're not listening to the males. Maybe they want to hunt some prey.
Yeah.
They do not. Okay. And this was intentional that I put this up here this way because for me, that was a pivot indicator. I did not want to study this any further. I didn't want to know why they didn't do this. I didn't want to dig in. After that testing, I didn't really feel like I was getting the responses I wanted. The background research really wasn't panning out. There was a lot of question about whether or not they could even hear the crickets because their call frequency was so high and it was just at the very edge of their hearing. And so there were a lot of things saying, I don't think we need to do another 20 trials of this. I don't think we need to keep going further or investigate what's happening. So no can be a complete sentence. That's like a half a lesson for you. When it's not feeling good, it's okay to say, you know what, I'm not going to pursue this any further, whether it's a job, whether it's a research opportunity, it's okay. And that's why I intentionally left this as no, and I'm not going to tell you any more about it because I don't look any further into it, right? So know your transferable skills. In the case of this frog, they had this auditory acuity, but it was so specialized that they were not transferring it into a different mode or into a different behavior, right? But you can. You can take a very specialized skill and say, how could I transfer this to something else? Maybe it's data analysis. You've been doing a lot of data analysis on your research. Maybe you're really good at problem solving. Maybe you're really good at, finding fish and identifying fish. How are you going to translate that into your next role or to your next job? Especially if you decide, I don't know if research is for me. I want to go do something else. And so I like to tell this story because a scientist that is now in our analytical laboratory, when he first interviewed with us, he had very little lab skill or experience. But what he told us in the interview, which is a very much one of those, tell us about a time when you blah, blah, blah interviews. He said, one time I came into work at Chipotle and there had been a delivery and I was the first person there. It was a box of chicken. It was outside the freezer. So I had no idea how long it had been there. I didn't know if it had been held at temp. It could have been there 5 minutes. It could have been there 3 hours. And I could have put it back in the freezer and no one would have known, and we would have had chicken for the day. But if I threw it away, we're going to be out of chicken. It was going to cause a lot of headaches. And he did the right thing. He said, you know what? I don't know what's up with this. He threw it out, called his manager, and they had to scramble. And it kind of screwed them over for the day, right? But when he told that story to our lab manager who was in the interview, she knew that that was going to be her candidate. Why? Well, we do water sampling. We do water testing nonstop, 365 days a year. We're testing right now because it's a holiday weekend. Those samples have to come in. They got to be on ice. Anybody done any sort of bacteriological or water quality sampling? They got to be on ice. If they're metals, they got to be preserved. They have a hold time. We have to know when that came in, that it was at the right temperature, and she needed to trust that an intern on a Saturday when she was not there was going to do the right thing instead of saying, oh, they forgot to put it on ice. That's okay. No one's going to know I'm going to put it in the cooler. And we're going to run the back tea anyways, right? And she used to say she loved folks that worked in kitchens or in restaurants because an analytical laboratory for something like water quality, samples come in, samples go out. Sometimes we're processing thousands of samples a day. We take them from all over our service area, and it's just like being in a kitchen. The order comes in, you run the recipe, you run your SOP, you process, you put it out, you're ready for the next one. It's constant, it's nonstop. Everyone from the supervisor to the lowest intern is running back teas on a Friday at 3 o'clock. I can tell you that right now. We're trying to get all that data out. So do not underestimate the value of your experiences, particularly those that are not in the sciences. Tell me about something that you did that was not in the sciences, that was not in the classroom, that made you who you are, so that I can get an idea of what your soft skills are, about what your integrity is like. They can't teach you that in a classroom setting. So be sure to share those experiences with your interviewers or with your next advisor, and then show, don't tell. And this is kind of what I was talking to you guys a little bit about. If you learned something up here, tell me about it, but don't just say, oh, we studied some water. What did you study? How did you study it? What was your favorite part? What did you learn? If you only did a little piece of a project, that's okay. I want to hear about it. I want to know what you specifically did and tell me and show me about it in a demonstrative way. So a lot of people say to us all the time, I know Excel, right? Who thinks they know Excel, right? Kind of, sort of, right? I'm so glad to see these hands down because a lot of people, when I was in school, like, oh yeah, I've used Excel. I put my budget in Excel. It's like what people use Excel for now, or R4, or some of these programming languages is insane. And if you tell your finance team that you know Excel, they're going to be like, wait a minute, let me see how you really know Excel. Okay. So if you're going to tell somebody you know how to do something, show them clearly and demonstratively. Okay. So last big lesson for you is engage in selective attention. So what our males do, one thing that we know about them is that call overlap is extremely unattractive to females. They don't like when boys are talking over each other, essentially. They want to hear clear and crisp so they can decide, are you attractive? Are you unattractive? So if two males overlap, it's seen as extremely unattractive to the females, okay? But there's a problem. Has anybody ever heard of frog chorus? Frogs calling at night, you're trying to fall asleep, it's just loud. There's so many frogs. So how is it that they're avoiding call overlap when there's 100 frogs in a room? Because if you're quiet, you might be inclined to just be quiet and wait for your turn. It's never going to come. Your turn is never going to come. So what males do is they engage in selective attention. They look to the most attractive male in their vicinity, and that's who they avoid call overlap with. This is my strongest competitor. We're going to chorus together. I'll make sure to steer clear of his calls. He'll steer clear of my calls. Now this is a real sense of who's really the most attractive. But if there's an unattractive male nearby, they don't care. They'll overlap and they won't wait for him to finish because they say, you know what? I'm better looking than you anyways. I'm better sounding than you anyways. So even if we overlap a little bit, she's going to pick me. So we see this selective attention. You can see on the top, that gray bar is the length of our stimulus call. And then you see all those calls on the right show that they're waiting until that stimulus is over. We have this little blip of about 240 milliseconds where they'll wait and then they'll produce their call. Whereas you can see here with the unattractive treatment, they barely wait for the stimulus to end before they call, okay? So what is that teaching us? Well, it's teaching us a couple things. First, listen and adapt. Listen to what your advisor is telling you. Listen to what your teachers are telling you. Change your behavior. Don't be so bullheaded that if they say, hey, you did this the wrong way, I want to show you the right way to do it. Take notes, listen, and make that change, right? And consider your peers with caution. In the same way that the males are being really selective about who they're willing to listen to, you should be doing the same. I'm sure you've already heard this 1,000 times over when you're looking at social media, not to compare yourself, but nobody ever tells you really about that in grad school or in the sciences. And so if I see that Harrison's got 5 publications in the time that I've only got 1, dude, the pressure is on. My advisor's like, Harrison published 5. Why didn't you publish 5? What are you doing? And if Harrison is my peer and I respect him and look up to him, that's when I might say, hey man, how are you managing to crank out 5 papers? And he's like, oh, it's super easy. I'm working on something that already had a bunch of data and it was already half written and I'm just finishing it. Oh, okay. Now I feel a lot better about my progress. But if I'm looking on some of these, especially on like LinkedIn, and some of these folks are posting all sorts of bogus stuff. You have no idea what it's like in their lab. They're acting like they wake up every morning, they do hot yoga, they go to the gym, then they come to the lab, they write 40 papers, they're published in Science and Nature and all these top journals. Like, ignore, right? Be selective in what you're paying attention to. And remember, the fruit of the tree is flavored by what it takes in, right? So if you are constantly consuming negative energy, people complaining all the time, that's the quality of work that you're going to put out, particularly in the sciences. You want to be in a good spot as you're doing this stuff. Okay. Seek out feedback and not just from your advisor. So it's awesome that we got to sit. I've never met you guys before, right? And I got to hear about your research, throw a few pointers in there. Really, I learned from you guys more than I could teach you, which was amazing. But do that more often. Find somebody who is not a scientist and explain what you're doing to them or what you learned here this week to them. And if they understand it, now you know that you understand it because you were able to explain it to them. So check your knowledge against people who are not in the sciences, check your research against people who are not in the sciences. Make sure that you're taking the time to understand it with them and then get some feedback. Hey, I didn't really understand that. I don't think you explained that part very well. Okay, great. Now I know I need to work on my understanding and interpretation of that particular concept. Does that make sense? That's going to make you a more well-rounded scientist, a more well-rounded researcher. And that way, if you decide for a career that's in a different field, you can explain the value of your time here. The last thing I'll leave you with from this lesson is build a personal board of directors. And I really like this one. Someone told it to me and I immediately did that. Or a personal committee if you're in the sciences. But this is, like I said, it's very similar to the seeking out feedback, but it's a group of people that before you make a big decision, before you say, should I go to this college or that college? Should I go to grad school or should maybe I take a year off and build my resume? You want to ask these 4 or 5 people that know you really well, that aren't your parents, because they're going to support you whatever you do, that aren't your advisor, but they know your dreams, they know your aspirations, but they also know your capabilities and your skills. These people should be honest with you and say, hey, you know what? Just being honest with you, I think you would love a little bit more time on some, post-baccalaureate work. Or why don't you take a job for a little bit, see if you like that before you spend all this money on grad school or before you move halfway across the country, right? So if you don't have those people now, think about who they could be for you and build that board of directors. Then lastly, take the lead. One of the last things that frogs can teach us about is building resiliency. They're very soft-bodied creatures, right? And so when they jump and they land on prickers or sharp sticks, they can get stabbed and get stuck in them, right? So these scientists had been radio tagging frogs with a little radio telemetry, little pill, and they had just stuck it under the skin. And they kept finding the radio tags through the little handheld device just out in the open. They couldn't figure out, like maybe somebody ate the frog and they left it out. But then they found one inside of a dead frog, but they didn't find the tag where they had installed it. They found it in the bladder. And they discovered that certain frogs have this ability that when they land on a sharp stick or something stabs them, their bladder grows out to the object, engulfs it, and then helps them remove it from the body. So they're very resilient, even in the face of really bad trauma. Build that resiliency. The more resilient you are, the more risks you can take comfortably. You can say, I'm going to try it. And if I fail, I fail. No big deal. I'm going to take a chance on that job, take a chance on this research project, throw a little money at this, throw a little time or effort into it. If it doesn't work out, that's okay. Failure, like Zach was talking about, is part of the plan, right? You don't learn by not making mistakes. You don't learn by not having failures. And I really want you to consider what other opportunities that you haven't thought about because you thought, maybe it's not for me. I'm a little nervous to try that out. Just try it, take the leap. But before you do so, build some resiliency. What are you going to do if things go bad? Is it going to be okay? What are you going to do next? Do you have a plan B? Build that resilience, okay? With that, I would love to hear from you and take some questions because I wanted to make sure we had some time to talk about what you guys want to do and what advice maybe or thoughts I could offer you. Okay. You guys got it figured out? Yeah.
How did you figure out how attractive the frogs were?
Yes, that's a great question. So before we started any treatments, we ran a preference test on the entire population. So we were out in Texas, and I left some of this out just for time in case somebody wanted to ask about it. So we show up to the site, and the very first thing we do is we do a preference sampling. So we grab some females, about 20 females from gravid pairs, and we run their preferences. You can test preferences very similar to the way I did. We just play them stimuli, and you give them a binary choice. And when they pick one or the other, you rank it a 0 or a 1. You run that through, and you build a preference function for the population. So we say, okay, on average, females find this attractive in this population. That's our starting point. Then unattractive, we raise the frequency up because we actually find that if you saw in some of those graphs I showed you at the beginning, some females have a tendency to like lower males on what we call an open preference. So if you go lower, that's not going to really feel that unattractive to them. They're going to be like, oh, okay, he's actually larger and maybe more attractive. So we start at that midpoint, and then we make the unattractive ones about, a few hundred hertz higher. And you can hear it in the call itself. It sounds very like harsh and kind of raspy. Yeah, that's a great question. And so that's how we start with that initial preference to determine attractive versus unattractive. Great question. Yeah.
What are some soft skills that are undermined or forgotten about that? you think of?
Oh, really good. And in fact, I glossed over this because I know I was moving pretty quickly. What you guys just did in the beginning, that 30-second elevator pitch, is a huge soft skill that's completely, I don't know, gone by the wayside, maybe because we don't practice extemporaneous speaking, really is what that is. But if someone comes up to you and says, hey, what are you passionate about? What are you passionate about? Right? You want to have that 30-second pitch. I'm really passionate about water quality and helping our environment. Great, done. Doesn't have to be long, doesn't have to be complicated. Figure out what that is and be ready to recite it. Do you know what I say all the time? This is our sewer district mantra. Hey, what's your role for sewer district? Well, my job is to build partnerships so that I can help explain to people who we are, what we do, and why it's so important. Say that every time. It just rolls right off the tongue. So practice that right in the mirror. So that way, when you're in an interview or you come to a class and the teacher says, okay, I want everyone to go around the room and say why they're here or what class, why did you take this class or what are you most interested in? Have that elevator pitch ready. So that's a soft skill that I think we need to practice. Another are just general interviewing skills. You should not be going into an interview without your first question already answered in your mind. And the first question is usually something along the lines of, tell me a little bit about yourself, right? It's like the elevator pitch, but it is not. You're not saying, well, my name is Danny and I like to garden and I have 2 dogs. And so that's not me. No. Tell me a little bit about yourself. Hi, my name's Danny. I'm really, really passionate about water quality. When I saw this post, I thought I was reading the job description and I thought, hey, I've done this, I've done that, I've done this. I spent a little time working over here where I developed this skill that you are specifically looking for. And then I took an opportunity over here. I learned this skill, which I think I could bring to this job. So you're telling them about yourself, but specifically as how it relates to the position that you are trying to get. I can't tell you how many folks I've interviewed. We get that one question. That's the only free form question in our interviews. So usually there's 5 questions. That first one is, tell me about yourself. That's all the only time you get to ask, tell me about yourself. The other 4 questions are, tell me about a time when you resolved a conflict. Tell me about a time when you analyzed a lot of data. Tell me about a time when you had to work on a team, and tell me about a time when you made a mistake and how did you correct it. Those are your 4 scenarios. Those ones are on the spot. We don't tell folks what they are, but they're very pigeonholed specific questions. So you don't ever get to tell me about your research up at the Stone Lab now because you missed that window because I'm asking you about solving conflicts and maybe you got along with everybody here, right? So it's really, really important that you don't skip that first question, which comes out of that extemporaneous elevator speech. So practice those at various. Great question. Yeah.
So you mentioned a lot about the interview
Mhm.
and how to conduct interviews,
Mhm.
which is great. But how do you, on a resume or a CV or a cover letter, how would you go about getting the attention? You know,
Yeah.
For example, the RUs, we reviewed 150
Yeah.
resumes, and I know how I
Right.
quickly glance through. I'm not going to read 150
Mm.
applications.
Right.
10 minutes. I'm going to just look for 3 or 4 key things and
Right.
move on. Mark
Right.
this one, move on.
Yeah.
So how do you go about narrowing down your search?
Yeah, and that's actually a really great question because one of the things we do when we're looking at the job skills, so it depends on what we're looking for, right? So if we're looking for a lab analyst or even an intern, we have a series of things we are looking for, which is, have you done water quality testing? If so, what parameters, what machines or equipment have you used? And have you taken chemistry? Right? That's kind of a big one because a lot of people in environmental science will take a biology class, they won't take a chemistry class, and they want you to have a chemistry class. And so somewhere on that top of the page, under the skills section, it should say really, really big, and it says so right in the job requirements, right? It says job requirements must have taken a chemistry class, must have some experience in water quality or understand principles of water quality. That first line really, really needs to, like a lot of folks, and what I do in mine, I have a kind of like, it's not quite a experience overview, but it says right at the top, because it says 10 years of experience in X. 15 years experience in what? 13 years experience in this with very specific activities and things that I've worked on. Then you jump into my schooling and my job experience and things like that. So if they're looking for water chemists, right? I put right at the top, experienced water chemist with 15 years of water quality monitoring experience, including these parameters and using this equipment. Put that right at the top, right? Because we have to dig, let's say, have you taken any chemistry before? Oh yeah, I was an analytical chemist for 3 years. Okay, why did you not say that at the top? Your resumes are probably in much better shape than most people's are, again, because you're here, you're doing some of this demonstrative stuff that says, I care about learning and developing myself. But you would be really surprised people undersell it. It's empty. It's got all sorts of weird Canva fonts. Just a blank piece of paper where I can read what you know and who you are was way better than anything that looks really pretty.
Yeah, I'll add on. to
Yeah,
that.
please do. Yeah.
So you, and as you gave a story of the person working at Chipotle.
Yeah.
And I was thinking like, that's a really good answer here in the resume.
Mm-hmm.
But when I look
Interview.
Interview.
Yeah.
But when I look at a resume, I don't need to know what you did at Chipotle. Because just list you worked at Chipotle.
Sure.
But what I would like to say is that, you tell me you worked at Chipotle or McDonald's, but then go put more detail into the science, tailor your resume to what you're applying to.
Right.
It's all know what you kind of did at
Chipotle, right.
But expand upon what you did for volunteering for the lab or what you did in this class. Be specific about that.
And I think one of the hard parts is, especially if you haven't done a lot of research, but you want a research opportunity, so you don't really have anything to put in there. That's where coursework would come in on a resume, interested in these or took these classes, learned these things. Or if you're really at the start, because we have folks that come right in, they're freshmen in college, but they're at the nearby college so they can work a little bit or they want to do an internship. And we've had opportunities to say, okay, they'll say interested in, taking classes in, enrolling in, learning about these techniques, even if they don't have necessarily demonstrable experience. I will say the one thing that where the restaurant experience and putting that kind of stuff on your resume is if you have any sort of management or leadership role, that matters because then I know that you can work with people or at least you have some of that experience. So even if it was McDonald's, great. Team lead at McDonald's, responsible for scheduling, payroll, and I don't know, discipline. Okay, now I know some things about you, even though if it was just, line at McDonald's, yeah.
At what point would you consider pivoting too much?
Pivoting is too much, you mean?
Like the degree of pivot is too much of a change.
Oh, yeah, that's a really great question. I don't know that I have a good answer for that in the sense that I think it's very relative, right? A lot of my peers at the time, as I told Zach and Harrison, when I said, yeah, I'm going to be done teaching, I'm leaving academics, I'm going to go work for the sewer district. People look at me like I had 4 eyes and 2 heads because they didn't understand why I made the choice. So I think for that really is going to be individual and I would ask yourself, is this choice, is this pivot that I'm making, my plan B, how could I turn that plan B into still reaching my goals or my preference? Does it have that? Because then if you're just saying, yeah, I'm quitting altogether and I'm going to go live in a van by the river, that's not going to bring you any closer to running your own lab one day, right? Not that that's a bad choice. Some people want to go live in the wilderness and go do that fun stuff. But they're saying, yeah, I want to disconnect from society. If you're saying, I want to climb the ladder, I want to grow in my career, then that pivot would probably not get you closer, right? And so I think it's going to be very subjective. But yeah, I don't think I have a one-size-fits-all answer and if any of your advisors want to weigh in on that, I think it's really, really important though, when you pivot, it's not just about, I'm changing directions because I want to do this over there. It's the effort spent, right? And why I brought up the choosing this, it's that the effort spent doing this is not worth, I'm getting the law of diminishing returns, or I'm not achieving what I want, and I'm putting a lot more resources into this and the impact that I'm getting. That's when I want to pivot. But what I'm pivoting to has to also sort of make sense for you. Yeah. That's a great question though. Any other thought? Yeah.
Okay, so other than great presentation skills, what transferable skills did you get from grad school?
Oh,
that you
my God.
brought with you to the sewer district?
Where could I start? So one thing that was really huge for me was data mining. I don't know if anybody spent any time with that, but like 3 weeks ago, one of my colleagues came to me. We're doing this big idling study for air quality. So we have about 300 fleet vehicles, and there's now new limits on air quality and how much we can idle these cars. She is an environmental and sustainability person, but she's not really a numbers person. She dropped this spreadsheet into my lap, and I was like, I'm in heaven. I was immediately pulling out outliers. I was saying, okay, exclude these people. They're fleet workers. They need to run the trucks for this. I'm running her down all of the scientific kind of principles about what data is good, what's bad data. You have to exclude these folks. Let's divide these folks. Hey, everything over 15 minutes, let's chalk that. Let's look at the department that they're in, but then let's chalk that up to a mystery, because if it was at -10 degrees, what was going on? How hot was it that day? We started diving in. So those data analyst skills, those question asking skills, knowing what questions she was trying to answer were really big for me. Yeah, presenting skills, like you said, understanding complex information and being able to like distill it out if you have to do some technical writing. That was a skill that was really powerful, because I write a lot of talking points for my CEO about projects that we're doing. So she gets up in front of a camera and they say, oh, we heard you're working with this university on this Vivianite project. And could you tell us a little bit more about Vivianite and how it forms in the wastewater treatment plant? So she was like, you need to call Roz right now, who's another researcher, and you need to get me everything you know about Vivianite. I'm like, how long do you have? She's like, 5 minutes of talking. So I'm taking somebody's 6-year research project, condensing it into 5 minutes and spitting it back out for her in talking points. So I do a lot of that, like translational stuff, but technical writing, right? It has to be accurate. It can't just be flowery sounding. It has to be the right language. I got to keep the right stuff. So there's that. The data analysis, probably, and I know this sounds kind of weird, but like grace under fire. So when you are in grad school, and anyone that's taking the test, at some point you're tested. And our exams were oral exams, and they last forever. And this person is asking you question after question after question about any topic that you could have possibly studied in the last 4 years, because they are pushing your knowledge and they want you to say, I don't know. That's what they're trying to get to, the I don't know point. And so through that experience, through my defense, through getting grilled on my publications, at the sewer district, we have a lot of angry customers sometimes, right? Things happen in our line of work. People get mad at us. People yell at me. People give me the double bird. People tell me where I can go shove it. These are all things that have happened in the last 3 weeks. And so I get yelled at, and I have to stand there because I'm wearing a logo, right? And I work, I'm a company man, right? I can't pop off. I'm going to end up on the news. And so I have to say, I can understand what's really. And I just sit there, and they just want to be heard. So I let them yell. And then when it's all spent, I said, okay, how can we resolve this? What direction can we go, right? I don't react. I don't pop off, because we've been down that road with our advisors, I'm sure, where you're just getting screamed at and things were a little bit tense, or your work is being questioned. And you have to just stand there and take the criticism, take the heat, and then respond, right? Move on. Something that we talk about, I do a lot of public relations work, obviously, because part of my job is PR. And one of the things that was said to me at a conference last week that I thought was really good, to give it to you all, have a holding statement. So a holding statement is what you say when you don't know, you need to come up with an answer, they're expecting an answer, but you don't have one yet, you need to think about it, right? And that holding statement can vary for different situations. But for example, if someone had said to me, did you just hear about the main line break and there's sewage running off through the hospital and there's a bunch of children covered in sewage and they're really upset about it, and I haven't heard about that, I don't know anything about it. One, I don't know if it's true. I don't know the extent. So I'm not going to spout off and say, oh, we would never do that, because what if it is true? So you have to have a way to respond to that, saying, that's really interesting. That's the first time I'm hearing about that. Can you give me some time to tell you more? And then give me your contact info. I'd love to discuss this with you. That sounds really serious. And then I take a step away. You don't conjecture. You don't make stuff up. You figure out, okay, what is going to be my holding statement? And so for a lot of customers, it's things like, wow, that sounds really interesting. Let me learn more about that and get back to it. That's like one of my holding statements. People say kooky stuff, which happens again all the time. But and most of it's not true. We have a newspaper on the east side. I'm not going to say the name of it. It's a kind of like the Scene magazine. They make up stuff all the time because they use AI generated articles, and it hallucinates stuff about the sewer district. So most recently, we are digging an open trench 200 feet underground to cool a data center in Slavic Village. The data center is not being built. The tunnel is to store sewage so it doesn't run into Lake Erie, and you can't use sewage to cool data centers. I hope I don't have to explain why to anybody in this room, but it's not the kind of water you use. But it's completely hallucinating. And so when someone called and said, I just read this article that said you guys are using sewage to cool a data center, I had to say, wow, that sounds really interesting. I've not heard that. Do you mind if I do a little bit of background research and give you a call back? Yeah, because I really want to know. And I'm like, where did they hear this? Oh, this newspaper. Okay, got it. Hey, ma'am, it was an AI generated article. They put it out and they put it at the bowling alley and they put it at the library, but it's not real. And but those people that publish it are not fans of us, so they clip it. So yeah, great question. But yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to think of other transferable skills, just like you were talking about. I think the biggest one when I made the leap was the field work, right? I had done field work, I knew how to work with animals, I knew how to do data analysis and technical writing and all that. But those transferable skills up into the communications role was really the education, the teaching, that. Great questions.
All right, let's thank
Yeah.
Danny one more
Thank you.
time. Yeah. I'm going to put up a QR code. So if you would like to send.
Should I end?
Yes, go
Okay.
ahead.
If anyone has specific questions, just hold it, note it,